Hi, hello. Are you enjoying your day so far? You do? Great. Now close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes, okay? And imagine you are walking down the street when all of a sudden you see a banker with a chest full of gold coins. You may think to yourself, a chest full of gold in this economy? I'm here to talk about mathematical problems, so just bear with me. It appears to be the girl, your age, standing right next to the banker. The gentleman invites you to play a game against each other. Okay, you're skeptical at first, but the chest full of gold looks captivating, and the girl is kind of nice, so you decide to just stick around and see what this is all about. The rules are pretty simple. You each get two choices. You can cooperate or you can defect. If you both cooperate, you each get 3 coins. If one of you cooperates and the other one defects, then the one who defected gets 5 coins and the other gets nothing. If you both defect, you each get a coin. The goal of the game is simple, to just win as many coins as you can. Okay, let's pause for a moment. And by the way, you can open your eyes if you haven't already. We need to analyze what would be the best strategy here. If one person cooperates, you can either get 3 coins by also cooperating, or 5 by defecting. If the other person defects, you can either get just 0, or a 1 coin by also cheating. In any case, though, you see that the better option for you is to defect. But here's the twist. If she's also rational, she will reach the same conclusion. And you both will end up in the suboptimal situation of getting only 1 coin each. Unfortunately, the inflation lately is kicking hard, so the outcome of getting only 1 coin does not suit you the best. It seems that in this situation appears only once, option of trying to collaborate is just simply not optimal. In game theory, we call this a finite game, when 2 people play against each other only 1 time. But what if banker will change the rules? What if now, instead of playing only once, you will get to play multiple rounds, let's say around 2000. Now, something very interesting happens. If you defect now, then your opponent will know that you defected and can use that against you in the future. So we have to find another way of getting as much coins as possible. As you can imagine, there are countless ways you can play. The problem I'm describing here is known in mathematics as a prisoner's dilemma. In 1980s, a political scientist, Robert Axelrod, decided to run a tournament when he invited some of the world's leading game theorists to play this game. And by the way, the game theorists are not just the guys playing Sudoku for a living, they're doing pretty advanced mathematics on the topic of gaming. So, he asked them to submit computer programs that will play against each other. He called those programs strategies, and he used points instead of coins, but the goal remained the same, to win as many of them. And there were numerous strategies submitted, some of them random, some of them with multiple lines of code written, some of them very simple. For example, there were strategies like Freeman that will start by cooperating, but if the opponent defected only once, they will keep defeating till the end of the game. Josh, on the other hand, would also be starting by cooperation, but later would randomly defect. Some of them would play only defecting, some would play only cooperating. And they had run a simulation on a computer, which wasn't like the computer we know now. It was then one of those big white box machines, but the results of how many points was given to each were pretty fascinating. You see, the most successful ones were sharing similar attitudes. And the simplest program ended up winning. Why? The standout was Tick for Tat, a strategy that began by cooperating, retaliates if the opponent defects, but forgives if the opponent returns to cooperation. the qualities that characterize the winning strategies, but the most importantly, the tick for that, was being nice, which means that they started with cooperation. The other quality was being forgiving, which means that if the opponent defected only once, they will also defect once and then still cooperate till the end of the game. Having said that, this thing about being nice and forgiving, it came as a shock to an experts because, some of them were trying to develop those nuanced strategies when, in fact, the simplest ones were doing the best. But, you can be nice and forgiving, but you also can be extra nice and forgiving. And does it pay off? There was one sample strategy, let's call it like a good man, and it was cooperating no matter what all the time. Unfortunately, it didn't pay off because it was quickly being taken advantage on by the more sneaky, randomly defecting ones. But with this interesting discovery, a few other tournaments had been run. And, again, strategies described as nice, forgiving, but cutting off when necessary were placed at the top. And you see, something that is very interesting to me is that those qualities, being nice, forgiving, but provocable when necessary, these are qualities that are characterizing the common morality, the so-called natural morality. And by the way, for now, it's not like Christianity, it's not like those philosophies that would develop later in our culture, like turn the other cheek philosophy. It's something much, much older, signs of which we can find in ancient Hammurabi Codex, which was written like a long time ago, and is actually the oldest piece of written law we have record of today. And to add even more context, cooperation pays even among rivals. During the Cold War, there was a huge problem with nuke production. USSR and United States had trouble cooperating, both developing huge amounts of their nuclear stockpiles. To avoid making an agreement of just simply banning all the nukes altogether, they decided to disarm slowly. And they checked each other whether they cooperated. Repeating this year after year, they dropped the number of all nukes down to 90%. Another example, and many of you probably have heard about, was Christmas 1913, during the First World War on the Western Front. Despite strict orders not to chillax with the enemy, the British and German soldiers decided to left their trenches, gather and bury their dead, exchange gifts, and play games. The rule of trust has been used again. If you do not shoot me, I will not shoot you. What is important to remark, though, is the fact that in an environment when there are a lot of sneaky strategies, as we can call them, interacting with the good ones, the cooperative ones were forming those kind of enclaves, those groups, when they would mingle with each other and, in the end, accumulate more points than their non-cooperative counterparts. This might be only a simulation, a mathematical prediction of some processes, but it also kind of reminds of an evolution process. People differ in beliefs and opinions and invent new ones almost every day. But we try to imitate our heroes and elders and adopt their behaviors, selecting the ones we just find that we are positively reinforced on. And maybe this is how we, as animals, went from just a group of random selfish organisms to individuals that could help and share with each other. Not because this is something that we did consciously or something that we did out of those altruistic motives, but simply because this grants us the biggest chances of survival, which is, of course, tied to having an offspring and resulting in an evolutionary success. And as you can see, the Axelrod's findings were applied to many areas, from evolutionary biology to resolving conflicts in international relations. But there is one more aspect that the tournament didn't cover. What if there's a little bit of random error in the game? You might think that this old eye for an eye mentality was somehow proven to be the most effective one. And while this is true in systems that are just perfect mathematical simulations, we know that in the real world, there are errors in communications, situations when one person tries to cooperate, but it comes out as a defection. You know, errors like this happens all the time. For example, in 1983, a Soviet satellite-based early warning system detected the launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile from the United States. But the US hadn't actually launched anything. And the system confused sun rays reflecting of some high-altitude clouds with the ballistic missile. Thankfully, Stanislav Petrov, who was the officer on duty this day, dismissed the alarm. But this shows potential costs of a signal error and the importance of just studying effects of errors in those strategies. When a tit for tat, the winning strategy, plays against itself in a noisy environment, they both start as usual by cooperating. But if one cooperation is perceived as a defection, they both start to lose points. If the error happens again, they start losing even more. You know, to break out of this, we need to play tit for tat, but with around 20% more forgiveness. This strategy turned out to be the most effective in the long run. Okay, so what can we learn from all of this? You know, there were many strategies of playing this game, and also the game of life. Axolotls tournament was repeated many times over, and the researchers kept adding new strategies, developing new ones that would evolve over time, that would just do different in different environments, but the main takeaways still hold. Be nice, forgiving, but don't be a pushover. Or communicate clearly, find the winning situations, and set clear boundaries. You know, this is the only way for us to create the world that will be supporting the cooperative strategies. We have to remember that we are each other's environments. And you know, in the short run, it's the environment that shapes the player. But in the long run, it's the players who define the game. And you know, to end it on a more lighthearted note, going back to the beginning, you know, remember this girl you were playing with? She was kind of nice and also kind of smart and used some pretty elaborate strategies. So with a pocket full of gold coins, because now you know how to play this game, you decide what a chance to ask this intelligent woman out. She looks at you for a moment and says no. But you know what? It's okay. She just doesn't know that the best strategy is to always start with cooperation. So you're better off as you are. Having end on that, I just want to say it was a pleasure speaking here. Have fun playing your game of life. Thank you.